So first things first, the order. How did the order line up and how did the accuracy line up compared to the books, the novel versions? Luckily, it did very well with keeping with the accuracy of what I read. The timeline, however, was switched around. I feel like with a lot of adaptations, you're not going to get exactly the same order as how you read it. That happens with most things, where some stuff is going to get swapped and happen in different places, especially if the book has time jumping properties to it, which this does. There was a huge section of the first two books that were... Anyways, there were the two first books of the 5 of this story had parts where it was when Wei Wuxian was with us again for the second time, and when he was alive as a teenager. It goes back and forth, but it stays in the teenage years quite a bit. But then near the end of the book, it like goes back to regular time. But then the second book has a lot of teenage years, and then the end of it, we're back where he is in a new body. And so 11 years later or so. And so in the donghua, instead of going back and forth like that, they just had pretty much like the first season. It's split up in 3 seasons, and the first season just has the beginning the same as the book, where there's this ritual that happened, and lo and behold, we hear all these stories about Wei Wuxian, about how he was dead and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden time jump, and then the ritual, and then he's back. And then at some point halfway through an episode, it's like 11 years prior to this, and like we go back in time, and then we stay there for like the rest of the season. And so it doesn't go back and give us a little bit of information, and then we go back to more as kids, where you're filling it in as you go. You're like, oh, now we're getting more backstory of this, what happened. Like, it just does almost all of the flashback stuff right in a row. So I feel like that kind of makes more sense when you're watching like this kind of media, to kind of have it just be going in a straight line. It does still have a few times where you do get the flashbacks to other things. So there are some stuff that still does that. But a lot of it was just like teenage year stuff for quite a long time, until it finally goes back to like present day. It didn't bother me or anything. I liked reading it the way that it was written, but I also liked watching it this way. So I feel like it was a correct decision to do it this way. Story-wise, though, they followed the story very well. Like, I feel like a lot of the English translations were like almost exact or very close to the same exact English translations as the book. So I feel like I was like, oh, I totally remember just reading this part. And so it was like, oh yeah, that definitely happened, because I remember reading it just like that. And so there were some things, but there are some stuff. So now we'll talk about some differences. So most of it was the same, but there are a couple things that, rather than like changing stuff, it was more like they just omitted things. So if you were wanting to watch this because you were really wanting to see a certain connection, some relationships do not get developed as much as they do in the book. So like, especially at the end, Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian, they're supposed to, spoiler alert if you didn't know that this was already gonna be pretty spoilery, they're supposed to get married, and they're supposed to like love each other and be together, and pretty much all of that, like, there's some hints to it in the donghua, but pretty much all of that is gone. Like, it's mostly just battling and discovering secrets, and more battling, and people dying, and people finding out certain things, and then more battling, and like, that's mostly what it is. We don't get to see, like, we still get to see the teasing that Wei Wuxian does. We still get to see certain like little glimmers of like how much they care for each other, but you ain't gonna see no kissing, you ain't gonna see no love scenes. darn. So if you were like really looking forward to that stuff, just know that you're not gonna see it, and you're gonna have to read about it. Especially if you get this special edition that has like the extras at the end. If you get one that has the extras, you're gonna get a lot more of those love scenes, but you're not going to really be getting those in the donghua. So there's this one part where you're like expecting a scene to happen, but it's like jumps to like the next thing. Like it was just totally like you wouldn't, if you didn't read the books, you probably wouldn't even have known that there was something missing there. But there definitely is a lot missing there near the end of season 3, which is like basically book 5 is what season 3 pretty much is. So season 1 is mostly books 1 and 2, maybe a little 3 because of the way they did the timeline, and then like 4 is like season 2, and then like 5 is season 3. So yeah, now next section, the music. I thought the music was great. There wasn't like a ton of like music with words and stuff, except for like the intro and the outro songs, and then just instrumental during the battles and things like that. But the song got changed for the 3rd season. It was a different one. Or was it for both 2nd and 3rd season? It got changed to a different song, and I was like, no, because I really like the first song of the intro, and it's also really prettily drawn, just like a really nice looking intro that they have. And in the first song, there's just this part that the singer hits this note, this certain note. He hits it flawlessly. It's so beautiful. His tone is so spot on this note that sometimes I would skip the first part of the intro just to listen to the last part of it where he sings this note, because I'm like, I don't usually skip, like me and my husband, like my husband never skips intros. We watch it every time. But when I'm watching stuff on my own, if I've seen it already a few times, I'll probably skip it. But in this one, I always would go right to like right before he sings that note that I'm like, oh, that note is so great. I don't even, like it's not even in English, but it's like, it doesn't matter. Like you can be touched by music in any language, like that's why I'm a music teacher, because I love music. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Like, have you ever experienced where you listen to a song and there is just one part that gets you every time? Like every time it gets to that part, you either get emotional, like you cry, or you get chills because it gives you goosebumps because it's just such a good part. Like if that's never happened to you, you gotta get to like a live show of a live performance of music, because listening to music live is usually what does it for me with the goosebumps and stuff. But there are some songs that I've come across just listening to from certain albums where there will be just this one thing that the singer does that I'm like, oh, that was perfect. And this happens in this song. And so I'm just curious if you even know what I'm talking about right now. But that happened to me listening to that song. I was like, that's great. So I really did enjoy the music. The ending song was like, it had like this more delicate song. Yeah, I think that's mostly what I wanted to talk about. I love the music. I thought that they did a really good job with keeping with the accuracy of the book, with the exception of a lot of stuff that they like took out in terms of the more romance side of the book. So it was lacking some of that, but they still had really strong scenes that were really beautifully done. And the way that they played the music with the Guchin and the Diza, whenever they were playing the instruments in the show, they also made that look really well done. I like all the characters, Wei Wuxian and Long Wangji, Long Zan, and also like Zhang Cheng, and we also have Wen Ning, and there was just so many things I was like, I really hope that they reveal this, and there's not very many episodes left. Are they going to reveal it? And then it's like, there it is. Like we were worried that maybe it was going to be skipped, and then it's there, and you're like, oh, okay. Some scenes were like fast, a lot faster than in the book, but they were still like in there enough for you to not be totally lost. But honestly, I'm really glad that I read the book first, because I don't typically watch donghwas or animes. Like, I watch some here and there, but like majority of the things that I've seen are not that. And so I don't seek it out typically. But when I have read something and I find out that there is something I could watch, it's like so much more intriguing to me, and like I want to watch it now. And so for me, it was a good step to read it first and then watch the donghua. If you've already seen it and not read the books yet, then you should definitely do that, because you are lacking some stuff by not reading the books. That's pretty obvious with a lot of things, but there are really, it's just really well written to where you can like visualize stuff in your head, and then you have the donghua that you watched that you can also reference to now. So I just think that sometimes with media, it depends on where you start. Like, you might not think you're interested in reading these kind of books, but then if you're super interested in like a video version of it, a different style of media doing it, then it might make it more enjoyable for you to try it in other medias. So I started with the books. It made me more interested in watching it when I found out there was a visual, audio and video format that I could watch. There was an actual series that I could go watch. I probably never would have watched that if I hadn't read these first. So it just really depends on your preferences, but I would definitely suggest doing both, because you're just getting more out of it. You're getting a new experience in a different style of media, in a different style that you are consuming, that maybe one of them speaks to you more, but the fact that you put them together, it's only enhancing the experience of that story. It's only making things more realized for you when you watch it. That's my opinion anyway. So if you haven't read them, but you've watched this, totally, I think you should read them. If you haven't watched them, but you've read it, then I would highly recommend you watch it. And now I will go watch the live action and see if my opinion is any different than it is now versus that style. The way that it's done, it's a new experience. So I'm excited to dive into that. And yeah, now I've been talking for too long. So I'm going to end it here. Let me know what you think, if you've watched it or if you plan to watch it. Hopefully you've seen or read it at least, so that I didn't give away too much stuff in this, since it was kind of spoilery, more so than like my other reviews have been. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.